Hey there, welcome back to the channel. There's a pain that hits deeper than heartbreak. It's the pain of betrayal wrapped in silence, the pain of someone leaving you like you never mattered. But even more brutal is the shame that creeps in when you realize you waited. You waited for their message. You waited for their apology. You waited for their love to return like it ever truly belonged to you. And as the days passed and the silence grew louder, so did the hatred, not just for them, but for yourself. You hated them for walking away like you were disposable, but you hated yourself more for standing there, hoping, hurting, watching the door, praying they'd walk back through it. That war within you, the anger at them, the shame inside you, is enough to break even the strongest soul. And I know right now, you're trying to understand how someone you gave everything could walk away so easily, how they could sleep while you stayed up all night, staring at your phone, blaming yourself, asking why you weren't enough. You think about every sacrifice you made, every time you chose them over yourself, every time you quieted your voice just to keep the peace. And they still left? They still chose the silence over your love. That kind of pain doesn't just hurt, it rewires your identity. It makes you question your worth. It makes you feel weak, desperate, broken. But I'm here to tell you, you are none of those things. You're not weak for loving deeply. You're not broken for waiting. You're not desperate for hoping someone would finally choose you the way you chose them. You were human. You were loyal. You were real. And in a world full of temporary people, that kind of heart is rare. But now, it's time to stop waiting. It's time to stop giving power to someone who already showed you who they are. It's time to stop punishing yourself for being someone who loved too deeply. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And that means not turning your pain inward, not becoming cold just because they were careless, not hating yourself for a wound they caused. Because waiting for someone who doesn't value you isn't love, it's self-abandonment. And today, that ends. Today we rise, not with bitterness but with brutal clarity. Today we walk out of this pain with lessons, not scars. This video is for the ones who waited, who blamed themselves, who begged in silence. This is for the ones who are done suffering in secret. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through 5 truths that will not only shift your perspective, but give you your power back. If you've ever said, "I hate them for leaving, but I hate myself even more for waiting," then stay right here. This isn't about them anymore. It's about finally choosing you. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I forgive myself for waiting. I choose me now. Let's get started. Number 1, forgive yourself for what you didn't know. You waited for them because you believed in them. You gave them the benefit of the doubt, not because you were naive, but because you were loyal. You saw their potential. You remembered their softest moments. You held onto the love you gave more than the pain they caused. And now you carry this weight, the shame, the regret, the anger turned inward. You ask yourself, how could I have been so stupid? But let me tell you something you desperately need to hear. You weren't stupid. You were sincere. You were someone who showed up with an open heart, who tried, who fought, who stayed. And that kind of heart is not something to hate, it's something to honor. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." You waited because you didn't yet know who they truly were. You hadn't yet learned that loving someone doesn't mean they'll love you back the same way. You hadn't yet seen that some people are better at pretending to care than they are at actually staying. But now you know. Now you've felt it. Now the mask has come off. And with that clarity comes your greatest power, self-forgiveness. Because you cannot punish yourself into healing. You cannot shame yourself into growth. You can't move forward if you keep replaying every text, every unanswered call, every time you should have walked away and didn't. The past is not a place to live. It's a place to learn. You stayed longer than you should have. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human. You trusted someone who didn't deserve it. That doesn't mean you're broken. That means you have the kind of heart this world desperately needs more of. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake in any thought or action, I shall gladly change. I seek the truth." And that's what you're doing now. You're seeing the truth. And it hurts. But growth often does. What matters now is what you do with that truth. You can choose to let it define you, or you can choose to let it transform you. You can keep beating yourself up for loving someone who couldn't love you back, or you can start celebrating the fact that you're strong enough to walk away from it now. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means releasing the grip of self-blame so you can finally breathe again. So you can look at the mirror and say, "I did what I knew with the heart I had, and now I know better." Let that be enough. Because if you carry this self-hatred any longer, you will keep bleeding on people who didn't cut you. You've suffered enough. It's time to stop fighting yourself for the love they failed to give. It's time to forgive the version of you who waited, because that version made you who you are, and who you are now is someone worth choosing. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I forgive who I was. I protect who I'm becoming. Number 2, stop searching for closure in the person who broke you. You've read every message 100 times. You've replayed the last conversation over and over, trying to catch the moment when things truly ended. You've wondered what you did wrong, what you missed, what you could have said differently. You keep asking yourself why they left, why they didn't fight for you, why they moved on so easily. And maybe, deep down, you're hoping that one day they'll explain it all, that one day they'll come back with the answers that make it all make sense. But here's the truth. Closure doesn't come from them. It never has. It comes from within. Waiting for them to give you peace is like waiting for the storm to apologize for the rain. It's not going to happen. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." You will never find strength waiting for someone else to tell you why they chose to walk away. Because even if they told you, even if they laid out every detail of why they gave up, it still wouldn't heal what was broken inside you. Because the pain isn't just about the facts, it's about the feeling of being abandoned, of being unloved, of being left in silence with a heart full of questions. And no explanation can fix that. No text can undo the nights you cried alone. No apology can rewrite the chapters they left blank. You have to stop thinking closure is something they owe you. It's not. It's something you give yourself when you decide to stop needing their permission to let go. Closure is when you finally say, "I may never know why they left, but I know I deserve someone who stays." Closure is when you stop rereading old conversations, hoping for a different ending. Closure is when you wake up and realize that the most powerful thing you can do is choose peace over answers. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life." And you don't reach freedom by begging for clarity from someone who didn't value your presence. You don't reach freedom by reopening wounds with their words. You reach freedom by stepping back and saying, "This pain taught me something. This ending shaped me, and I will not give it the power to define me any longer." Stop looking to the person who broke you to rebuild you. They can't. And even if they wanted to, they wouldn't know how. They weren't capable of holding your heart then, and they're not capable of healing it now. Closure isn't found in their return, their explanation, or their regret. Closure is found in the moment you say, "I deserve more than this confusion. I deserve more than this pain." And you walk away, not because it doesn't hurt, but because you finally realize you're worth more than the silence they left you with. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I create my own closure. I choose peace over confusion. Number 3, you can miss them and still move on. Missing someone doesn't mean you made a mistake by letting them go. Missing someone doesn't mean you should go back. It simply means you're human. It means a part of your heart remembers the moments that once felt like home, even if that home turned into a prison. You can miss the way they laughed, the way they held you, the way their name lit up your phone, and still move forward without them. We have this false belief that if we're still hurting, still longing, still waking up with their memories stitched into our thoughts, then we must not be healing. But that's a lie. Healing isn't the absence of missing them. It's the refusal to let that longing pull you back into what broke you. Epictetus said, "When someone is properly grounded in life, they shouldn't have to look outside themselves for approval." Missing them does not mean you need them. It does not mean you belong to them. It just means a part of your soul is adjusting to the loss of something it once clung to. But now it's time to understand that longing doesn't mean belonging. It's time to stop confusing memory with meaning. Yes, you shared something real. Yes, it mattered. Yes, they meant something to you. But that doesn't mean they're meant to stay. Missing them is a sign you gave your heart deeply, fully, without reservation. And that kind of love deserves to be honored, not mourned forever. Just because you miss them today doesn't mean you won't wake up tomorrow and feel a little freer. Just because their voice still echoes in your head doesn't mean their presence belongs in your life. And just because your heart stumbles when you hear their name doesn't mean you should reach for their hand again. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." So don't fear the ache of missing them. Fear what will happen if you let that ache stop you from living again, from loving again, from choosing yourself again. You can carry the memory and still chase your future. You can hold space for the past without letting it block your path. There is room for your grief and your growth. You don't have to be completely over it to move forward. You just have to be brave enough to walk while you're still limping, to smile even when your chest is heavy, to believe in joy even when your heart is still cracked. The presence of pain does not mean the absence of progress. So stop waiting to feel nothing before you let go. Let go even with trembling hands. Let go even if you miss them every night. Because the truth is, you can love them, miss them, cry for them, and still never go back. That's not weakness. That's power. That's freedom. That's you finally moving on. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I can miss them and still move forward. I choose healing over history. Number 4. You became the person they couldn't handle. They didn't leave because you weren't enough. They left because your growth, your honesty, your capacity to love deeply terrified them. You didn't become too much. They were just never built to hold something real. And I know you've blamed yourself. I know you've replayed every moment, asking if you were too intense, too emotional, too honest, too available. But what if I told you you weren't too much? What if I told you that you were just finally becoming the version of yourself they couldn't control, couldn't manipulate, couldn't keep small? Marcus Aurelius once said, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And when you started thinking clearer, seeing patterns, noticing red flags, setting boundaries, they saw it. They felt the shift. They saw the light in you that could no longer be dimmed. And instead of rising to meet you, they ran. Instead of growing with you, they pulled away. Not because you failed them, but because they were never ready for the kind of love that required accountability. They were never ready to be seen so deeply. Your standards exposed their laziness. Your presence highlighted their absence. Your commitment made their inconsistency too obvious to ignore. And instead of changing, they left. Because staying would have meant evolving, and not everyone is ready to face the mirror of someone who loves them with truth. You didn't scare them because you were needy. You scared them because you were becoming whole. And wholeness demands depth, effort, and maturity. You became someone who wasn't afraid to ask for clarity, who wasn't afraid to speak up when something felt off, who wasn't willing to settle for almost love. You started loving yourself, and that made it impossible for them to manipulate you the way they once did. And that's when it all started falling apart, not because you were wrong, but because you were growing beyond the limits of what they could offer. You outgrew their excuses. You outgrew their silence. You outgrew their shallow love. And now here you are, blaming yourself for becoming the version of you that was finally strong enough to walk away from the chaos. Stop, right now. Stop apologizing for evolving. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." You started mastering your emotions. You started healing. You stopped begging. You stopped shrinking. You stopped accepting less. That's not weakness. That's evolution. And it scared them. So let them go. Let them stay gone. Because the version of you that cried on the bathroom floor is not the version standing here now. You are the storm they couldn't weather. You are the peace they couldn't handle. You are the light that exposed their shadows. So stop wondering what you did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. You just stopped making it easy for them to keep taking pieces of you without giving anything back. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. I didn't lose them. I found myself, and they couldn't handle it. Number 5. Stop hating yourself for holding on. You stayed longer than you should have. You kept hoping, even when all the signs told you to let go. You forgave too quickly. You explained yourself too many times. You made excuses for their silence. You saw the red flags, but chose to see the good. And now, the part of you that is finally waking up, finally seeing the truth, hates yourself for it. You hate that you were patient with someone who took you for granted. You hate that you kept showing up when they stopped trying. You hate that you wasted so much time waiting for a version of them that never existed. But listen closely. Hating yourself for how long you held on only keeps you trapped in the same pain. Holding on didn't make you weak. It made you loyal. It made you compassionate. It made you human. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." The pain you feel now for holding on too long, that is not your prison. That is your pathway to power. You held on because you saw the best in them, because you loved with your whole heart, because you were willing to weather the storm in the hope that they would finally choose you the way you chose them. That's not shameful. That's beautiful. And you never deserved to be punished for love. Stop punishing yourself for believing in something real, even if they never met you there. Let go of the self-hatred. It serves no purpose now. They didn't show up for you the way you needed, not because you were too much, but because they were never enough. Epictetus said, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them." Your regret is not the result of your past. It's the result of how you're judging your past. So, reframe it. Stop seeing yourself as the fool. Start seeing yourself as the fighter who finally chose to stop fighting for someone who would never meet you halfway. The one who learned, the one who grew, the one who finally let go. That strength didn't come from being perfect. It came from being real, and you were real. The next time you hear that voice inside your head saying, "You were so stupid for waiting," respond with compassion. Say, "No, I was hopeful. I was brave. I loved fully, and now I'm wise." Because every second you spent holding on gave you the clarity to now choose yourself. And that is never wasted. So, stop drowning in shame. You've carried enough. Let the past be heavy, but don't let it be permanent. Breathe, release, forgive. Because your healing doesn't begin the day they apologize. It begins the day you stop hating yourself for surviving in the only way you knew how. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I forgive myself for holding on. I honor my healing. So now you've heard the truth. The truth your heart always knew, but your hope tried to silence. You waited, not because you were weak, but because you believed in love. You stayed, not because you didn't have options, but because you had loyalty. You kept your heart open for someone who closed the door without a second thought. But today that ends. Because you've outgrown the version of yourself that begged. You've outlived the version of yourself that blamed. You've buried the version of yourself that made excuses for people who never showed up for you. And now, what rises from that pain is power. Not loud, not angry, but quiet, steady, unshakable power. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that's exactly what you're doing now. You're finding strength not in being chosen by them, but in choosing yourself. You're finding freedom not in the apology that never came, but in the acceptance that you don't need it. You don't need closure from someone who didn't value your heart. You don't need their return. You don't need their love. Because the truth is, they lost you. But you're just beginning to find yourself. And I know there will still be days when the memories sneak in, nights when the silence feels heavy, moments when you'll still question why they left, why it wasn't enough, why they couldn't stay. But don't let that temporary pain make you forget the permanent truth. You were always enough. You were always worthy. And now you are finally free. Let this heartbreak not be your undoing, but your awakening. Let this silence not be a void, but a space where your soul can breathe again. Let this end not be your downfall, but your origin story. Because you're not just healing, you are rising. You are becoming someone who no longer chases love, but attracts it through peace. Someone who no longer waits, but leads. Someone who no longer needs validation, but walks with purpose. And to anyone who comes back now, they're not returning to the same version of you they left. They're returning to someone they can't reach. Not because you're bitter, but because you've elevated, you've grown, you've transcended. And now you walk alone, not because no one wants you, but because you finally want yourself. That's the power of heartbreak when faced with courage and clarity. That's the gift hidden in the pain. And if this video reached your heart, if you felt seen, understood, lifted, don't keep this message to yourself. Share it, comment, subscribe. Because there are so many people still waiting in silence, still blaming themselves, still trying to turn wounds into worth. And they need to hear this truth too. You're not broken. You're becoming. You're not behind. You're beginning. This isn't the end of your story, it's the start of your comeback.